All right, everybody, today we're going to talk about cellular transport and homeostasis. So we have trillions of cells, and they all have to get rid of things out of their cell that we don't need. We have to put things into the cell that we do want, good things in, bad things out, kind of. And doing that helps us keep a healthy balance of things inside and outside of our cells. And that's all about homeostasis. That's what homeostasis is going to be. We're going to dive more into that right now. Cool. So first we need some key vocabulary. Okay, some important terms here. So we have at the bottom a word called solute. And that here, let's write these down too, substance that is being dissolved. Okay, that's kind of a general term, but it's anything that's dissolved in a liquid. Okay. So this might be some food coloring powder or something, maybe some Kool-Aid powder. Your solvent is the thing that is going to be doing the dissolving. Again, kind of just a general definition, not like a technically correct definition, but that thing, the solvent, dissolves the solute. Okay, so typically our solvent is water. And actually, since we're talking about cells, our solvent is most definitely water. And blood and interstitial fluid, we're going to get into that. Water is what dissolves all of those substances. And then the last thing, when we put those together, we get a solution. Okay, solution is just the solute dissolved into the solvent. Cool. Get those down. Pause it if you need. All right, so what I want to kind of focus on here is not just on like the picture of, dissolving blue food coloring into water. This has real application in our body. So what we see here is that we see a blood vessel, right? And so this blood vessel comes down, and it comes down through tissue, right? So maybe this is like some liver tissue or something. So maybe these are liver cells. We're just making this up, right? And the blood vessels come down through and deliver what they need. And so things like nutrients go out, and they eventually get into the cells. And things inside of these cells that we don't need. So let's say like oxygen is something you need. I know that red color is terrible right here. But then like CO2 is something that the cells are making and don't want anymore, and so that would go back out, right? And then you can see the red blood cells. There are other things in the blood too. There are proteins for defense. There are hormones. There is sugar. There are other dissolved gases and minerals. So there's plenty of stuff dissolved in the blood. Okay, so it's so hard to see. So stuff that is dissolved in the blood. There's also stuff in this space out here. This is called the interstitial fluid. Okay, all of this space out here, this is also liquid. There's liquid around your cells, and there are solutes dissolved in those spaces too. And then your cells are also liquid, right? Like there's also water in your cells. So your cells have stuff dissolved in them too. Okay, and so this topic here is all about how we maintain a good balance of all of those things inside your cells versus the interstitial fluid and versus in the blood. How do your cells do that, right? So we're gonna get into that, but let's write some things down. Okay, so here I'm gonna kind of go through this flow of ideas. So cells are surrounded by water inside and outside, right? So here, inside the cell and outside the cell and in your blood too. We have the cytoplasm that's inside the cell. The blood surrounds your cells. And interstitial fluid, that's all of the fluid is surrounding your cells in any of your tissues. So in these fluids, what is dissolved? Well, we have gases, so things I was mentioning already. We have nutrients. Like, for example, sugar is a really good one. So let me write some examples. Gases, just some basic ones. CO2, O2. And oxygen is actually carried through your blood by red blood cells, but that's okay. We'll just go with it. Minerals, proteins, okay? We don't need examples for everything. What the heck? Sodium, potassium, calcium, okay, lots of stuff. Proteins. Sorry, just blanked. Proteins, we have like antibodies. We have hormones. Okay. So all of these things exist in the spaces, inside your cells and outside your cells. And your cells are going to be trying to constantly keep the correct concentration and the correct, like amounts of all of those things inside the cell if they need to be inside the cell, or outside the cell if they need to be outside of the cell. And we're going to talk about how the cell actually does that. Okay, so as the cells must maintain a balance of these materials inside and outside the cell, that is called homeostasis. Okay, so let's make sure we're writing this stuff down. Okay, this is all important here. One example is somebody who has diabetes. This is actually an example of not being able to control correctly inside and outside. If you have diabetes, there are different kinds, but let's say type 1 diabetes, your body doesn't make the hormone insulin, which would help you get sugar from your blood, where it's dissolved in the blood, into the cells. So your body isn't doing that. And so you would actually kind of be out of balance, right? And so you might hear that diabetics have a hard time managing their blood sugar. And normally that's something that your body can do really well through this process, this general process of homeostasis. Okay, so diabetes is actually an example of your body kind of not doing homeostasis, or not having the ability to do homeostasis. Okay, so how do the cells maintain homeostasis? Well, they are going to use cellular transport. Okay. Before we get onto that, I want you to draw. Yes, I'm going to say we're going to do this. Okay. We're going to draw what we just saw on our previous slide, but a little bit simpler. Okay. So here is our blood vessel. Okay. So draw your blood vessel. And then we're going to just make some cells here that surround your blood vessels. So let's label. We got blood. We have interstitial fluid. And we have our cells. Okay. So the whole point is that in your blood there are, or in all of these fluids, there are solutes that are dissolved, right? Solutes are things that are dissolved in a solvent, which is water of our blood or interstitial fluid. And so let's just do kind of some main ones. Let's do oxygen and CO2 and glucose. And glucose. Okay, so oxygen has to come down through here, right? Oh, there's a bunch of oxygen in your blood. It's really on red blood cells. That's okay. But it's going to be dissolved in your blood, and then it has to go in through here and get into your cells. Okay. Meanwhile, like I said, so that's something that has to go into your cells, right? So your cells are having to get that out of the blood and into the cells. On the opposite hand, we have CO2, which is being made inside of the inside of any of these cells out here in the tissue. We said it was liver tissue earlier. It could be muscle tissue or something. And the CO2 is dissolved in the cell, and it has to get into the blood. So now there's CO2 in the blood, and that is going to go out and eventually get to your lungs, and you're going to breathe that out, right? So we have to balance O2 going in with CO2 going out. Again, homeostasis. And the last thing, maybe we are eating some sugar. I'll make these glucose molecules little stars. So we're going to have glucose in here too. And this glucose has to get into your cells as well, okay? So again, we are trying to get this balance of things that we want inside the cells and outside the cells. We got to get things in, we got to get waste out. And that, again, is called homeostasis, is that balance. And so we are going to do this by transporting things inside and out of the membrane. So transport. So let's get on to that. All right, cell transport. Movement of nutrients and waste into and out of the cell through the cell membrane. Write that down. There are a couple different ways, and we will get to those ways in the following videos. Here are some, and again, we'll just go over them later. But essentially, this is kind of a cool example over here. We have to get things into another cell, right? We want nutrients. So let's say these are nutrients. Oh, sorry. This is the nutrients. This is the food particle. It goes in. Your cell absorbs it, and then you break it down, and then we digest it, and then we get rid of the waste. The waste goes back out into our blood, and then we get rid of that waste. Okay. So cell transport. Okay. And again, this helps maintain homeostasis. All right. What controls transport of materials into and out of the cell? Well, the cell membrane. Okay. I have this coffee filter here because a coffee filter is kind of like a cell membrane in that it only lets certain things through and it holds other things in there, right? So namely, when you're making coffee, if you've done this, it holds the coffee grounds in there, and then water or coffee flavored water, I guess that's coffee, well, these are drops, drips out into your mug. And then you have coffee, right? Well, a cell membrane is also like that in that it only allows certain things to get through. Some things it's like, nah, and then some things it does allow to get through, okay? And this is called selectively permeable, right? It only allows certain things to pass into and out of the cell. Oh, look, I misspelled this. Check it out. Not anymore. Okay, so the cell membrane is going to be key. Certain things can pass directly through. Certain things have to use like little cheater channels like this, right? It has to go through there because some things are too big to go directly through like this. They can't, and so maybe they use a channel like this. There's a bunch of different ways that, and we'll go over some of them later. But the cell membrane only allows certain things in and out.